Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Drury Outdoors 100% Wild podcast. I'm your co-host, Tim Chelsvik, and joining me is Mr. Matt Drury.
Hello, hello.
How are you?
I'm good. I'm excited because today, usually we do our little BS session, getting, what have we been up to the last couple of weeks where we've been hunting, but not today. I want to get right into it because we got a special guest with us. We have Mr. Pete Shepley from PSE, Precision Shooting Equipment, and a longtime partner of ours, I think running on 13 or 14 years now. Pete, hello. How are you today?
Pretty good. So far, 88 degrees here today.
Hey, you don't have to brag.
No kidding.
Although it's been unseasonably warm here in the Midwest this year, it's kind of given us a slow start to the fall. Realistically, September was really warm, and most of, if not all of October has been really hot here. So, I think we can actually relate with some of those temperatures you have out there in Tucson.
Yeah, you can tell it's hot out here because I haven't got the big elk pictures this year on my phone like I usually get. So I don't think people really got them engaged. So it's kind of a different year. It just seemed like there aren't any elk. I haven't seen only but one picture of a big one. Dirk Eddy from Montana is one of our staff guys, and he shot one at about a 410. So it's pretty nice.
Jeez.
That's the only big one I've seen.
Yeah, our guys struggled out west this year, whether it was mule deer hunting or elk hunting or whatever the case may be. We just didn't have as much luck as we usually do, and we probably had. I bet we had 8 guys out there hunting this early season. So it was a slow start for us, but now the whitetails are kind of kicking in, the rut's getting closer. We're making up for it. We're making up for that lost time.
Yeah, I'm seeing big pictures of whitetails coming on my phone every day. Big ones. Be good.
Yeah, good.
Cool. Well, Pete, we're so excited to have you on the show. You recently inducted into the Legends of the Outdoors Hall of Fame, so congratulations on that, and for good reason, because you're responsible for a lot of innovation and why the archery industry is where it is today. So thank you from us for your service over the years, and just kind of wanted to give people maybe a thumbnail sketch of how you started out in the archery industry, because it wasn't always an industry per se. Someone had to kind of kick it off.
Well, I started shooting a bow about in the mid-40s. I was on the farm a lot with my grandpa Gale up in Rockford, Illinois. So he was a big outdoorsman, hunter, fisherman, and everything, and a farmer. But he never let us kids sit still at all. So we made our own bows out of Osage orange, and we'd shoot them till they break, which took about a month when they dried out, and then we'd make another one. But I shot my first archery tournament in 1949. I think it was a field archery or an animal round. I can't remember, but I've been in the game a long time, so it's been a great fun time, and I just love the sport. I don't know if anybody likes it more than I do, and I think I'm probably one of the oldest guys in the sport now, as far as hunting and tournament shooting and the whole gamut of it. So in manufacturing, so it's been a fun ride.
So what is your actual background? Because you didn't start out, just with a company here. You started out in another industry altogether, correct?
Yeah, a couple of them. When I got out of school, I worked for U.S. Steel and was in a big wire mill and that in Joliet, and that wasn't a lot of fun for me because it's a big old dirty place and 100-year-old mill. So I lasted about a year there. Then I went to Olin Chemicals, and that was a sulfuric acid plant. And that was even less fun. I was just running pipe all over the place as an engineering deal. But then a friend of mine, Bob Bliss, who I interviewed with at Magnavox when I was getting out of school, and he wanted me to come there, but I didn't because I wanted to go back home for some reason. And then anyway, he called me one day, said, "You tired of that job?" And I said, "Yeah." He's, "When you want me?" He said, "How about tomorrow?" And I said, "Well, about 2 weeks." And went to Magnavox down in Champaign, Illinois, and worked there for about 10 years. And it was a great thing for me because I got to do products from the beginning and all the way through to selling it and testing them and all the things that go along with it. And I got to run part of the Stinger missile program. I had the safe and arming and warhead, and that was kind of the smart part of the missile. And General Dynamics, I think, had the seeker on the front, and I think Thiokol Chemical had the rocket motor on the back end of it. So I had the middle of it, and it was really a fun program. I had it for about 8 or 9 years, and couldn't have been better for me because you learn how to work with I had a bunch of PhDs under me, and for some reason, I don't know, I was like a kid compared to those guys, but they treated me really good and helped me all through it, and turned out really to be big time fun for me, because when you get up in the morning, I couldn't wait to get there because I just loved the job, and there was always something going to happen that day that was really going to be fun. So I just loved the thing, right from testing them and to building them and the whole program and dealing with the military, and it was just a real educational experience, and it kind of led in to making bows and arrows. So I always tell everybody it was in the aerospace, and now we're in the aerospace again.
So were you just really mechanically inclined, or did you actually have schooling in that field?
No, not in that field, but I have a mechanical engineering degree. So it's, when people were talking electronics, they had to talk to me in terms of water pipes and tanks. It's kind of the way you explain it to somebody that doesn't have a feel for the electrical engineering aspect of it. But it wasn't hard to pick up, and these guys are really good about helping me through that kind of stuff. So I managed the program and dealt with several engineers and several technicians, and we had a really good, fun program that I just loved it. And the neat thing about the whole Stinger missile program was that we were 100% reliable in all testing, and that was really good. So really felt good about that. And the missile's still going. It's in Raytheon here in Tucson, Arizona now, and it's a 50-year-old missile now. But they still make them. So It's a good one.
So explain kind of the thought process behind leaving a probably pretty stable job there at Magnavox to go into the budding archery industry.
Well, one day we had a problem with the missile, and we were 2 seconds slow on arming at minus 40 degrees Fahrenheit. So we had a big meeting with all the generals. A couple big generals were there at the meeting, and the one general called me boy, and that was kind of fun. So
I'll put you in your place.
You got this thing fixed? And I said, yes, sir, General, sir, I got it fixed, but I need a couple more weeks of testing to make sure we're good. Anyway, he said, you sure you got it fixed? I said, yeah, I'm sure, but I need that testing time. He said, no, I want you to turn the production line on right now and get rolling. Oh. I said, well, I hear you loud and clear, General, sir, but I'm not doing that. And that was the last minute I worked on that program.
Wow.
So anyway, yeah. He didn't fire me, but they took me off of it and put me on another program. So it really was pretty neat, because I would go to Picatinny Arsenal every Friday morning for a bid meeting, and people would present their crazy ideas on weapon systems. Mm-hmm. So if it fit the area that I had my expertise in, then I would bid on it to try to prove the viability of the program, where the weapon could work, or we could even make it or manufacture it. So I did that for a couple more years, and that put me at about 10 years at Magnavox, and I was really kind of getting tired of it, and I wanted to do something, and I told my boss, you need to lay me off one of these days, and he said, well, why don't you quit? And I said, well, I need the money that you owe me for leaving. Anyway, about it a while, and he threw a cardboard box in my desk there about 6 weeks later and says, get your stuff together and see ya. And
wow.
So we shook hands. We're really good friends. And so I left there and started making plastic release aids and cushion plungers for arrow rests. Mm-hmm. And the plastic vanes came into part of it, and little wrist slings, just little trinket stuff, but it was really fun, because I could make more money in one night watching Johnny Carson making some of these toys than I could make working all week. So that was really kind of fun. So especially in the sport you liked. And then we bought an old junk motorhome, and we traveled all the archery tournaments. And on weekends I'd sell all this stuff, and people loved it. And I figured, well, we can make this work. And then as we went along, we got to making more and more things. And first one, we made a bow and took it to Indiana to their state championship. And before I left the tournament, I'd sold 200 compound bows and didn't know how I was going to make the third one. So,
were you a little nervous then, taking those orders?
Yeah. Yeah, people ask my wife, how do you stand not knowing you're going to have a paycheck on Friday night? And she says, well, no, I never thought about it. It's always worked.
Wow.
But, yeah, it was a great journey there, because people trusted you to make stuff. They knew I'd been around the sport a long time. Yeah. And they knew I had a pretty good feeling for products. And so, it's one of these things, you have a card table out in front of your old junk motorhome and yet the archery tournaments, and you'd sit there till 2 o'clock in the morning talking to people, and they'd buy stuff. So, and they were happy with it, and it was really, really kind of fun. It was just really the kind of the best days. You look back at it, those are the best days because it was pretty much stress-free. Anyway,
so you
a lot of great products.
You started the company. Was that in the early 70s that you officially started PSE?
Yeah, right. But about 70, I think. It's kind of debatable, but it was 1970, really.
So when you made that leap and started doing it full time, I mean, before you started making the bows and had that big order come through in Indiana, how many of those like plastic vanes and how many of the trinket type stuff were you making, and where were those? Were you distributed them somehow to dealers?
Yeah. Well, I would. Most of it was just retail sales at archery tournaments, but I did. We were located in a hog house behind my house. Sure. And I just filled in the little doors where the hogs would go in and out and shoveled it all out and poured concrete in there. We had about 1,800 feet in there, I guess. But we did $1 million in sales the first year out of it.
Oh
and it was
gosh.
really, pretty good profit of it. So it got everything started. But the plastic vanes and the release aids really started it because they were very popular at the time and still are, of course. So we could fund making the bows that we wanted to do. So that's what got the bow started.
That's incredible in your first year. That's like that would be like a number you'd be proud of today.
No kidding.
Much less 1970. I mean, that's really
Out of
awesome.
a hog barn.
Yeah, it's that easy today, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, is there any gadget from back in those days that kind of still exists in some a little more modern iteration that you're really proud of?
Oh gosh, not really. I don't think of it. We don't make the vanes anymore. We don't make the arrow rest parts anymore that we did then. And the release aid we made are just one little solid plastic piece, but they were the beginning of release aids. And there was somebody in California, one or two guys in California that came out with them about the same time I did. And they were kind of takeoffs of like the Chinese thumb ring and things like that was an ancient thing. It was not quite the same, but it was just a plastic ledge that you hooked the bowstring on and pulled it back with your index finger and squeezed it off with your second finger, and it worked really good. And they were just every bit as accurate as the mechanic releases we have today.
Really?
So as you're getting inspiration for those types of things, where is it coming from? Just the need, a need for a product that would do a certain thing for you when you're out there shooting, or where does that inspiration come from?
I don't know where it came from, to tell you the truth. You sit around and you're working on something, because I usually worked on that stuff after work, and I got home around 5 or 6 o'clock. I'd be working on until 10, 11 o'clock midnight. And as you're working on something, you'd think of something else. The stuff just would come to me, and then you'd make one. And I was still at Magnavox in the early 70s, so I'd go to work in a tinker shop in the daytime. I'd go make one. And or if it took a few days, everybody'd go to lunch, but I wouldn't do that. I'd go to the tinker shop that was set up for engineering guys to go play with, and I'd make a toy, and then I'd show it to somebody, and somebody'd order one, and I'd make two of them. And then just the way it got started.
Unreal. Wow. So obviously the archery industry and archery technology has evolved over time. We're looking at carbon risers now, but my understanding is that you all created a carbon riser back in '94. Was that one of the earliest examples of a carbon bow?
That was the first one, yeah. No matter what anybody says, the first carbon riser was made in 1994. And we made it here at an engineering guy named Alan Smith, who ran our engineering department. He's a pretty innovative guy, and between us, we knew what we wanted, and it was pretty simple. And really, it's no different than what we make today. We just had a company in California that did it for us, and a little bit different kind of a method of manufacture, but it was every bit as good. And at the time, they were expensive, and probably more expensive there just for the handle than it is now. But it's we sold, I don't know, 2,000 or 3,000 of them, but we just couldn't get enough of them to really make it work. And at the time, if we couldn't sell, 3,000 or 4,000 of a model of bow, we kind of just dropped it. So it got, I think the company that was making the handle for us went away, and then we didn't have anybody else, and so we didn't think we were selling enough of them to make it worthwhile. So we dropped it for a long time.
Okay.
So over the years, you guys have obviously there's a lot of innovation there. What was the most innovative thing do you feel like since 1970 that really put PSE on the spot? I mean, when we came over, it was that year or the year after you guys introduced the X-Force, and obviously you guys made some real leaps in speed there for a bow. And then, of course, you guys reintroduced the carbon. And there's been a lot of things since we've been there 14 years. In your opinion, what's the biggest thing, the most innovative thing you guys have done?
Yeah, I think it was that the cam that put us up, in the 250 foot a second or 350 foot a second range in speed. And at the time, I was talking to Gary Simons at the archery trade show one time. He's an engineer for Bear, and he and I had been good friends for a long time. And at the time, he was an engineer for Matthews. And we were waiting in line to go to dinner one night, and he said, I said, well, Gary, what do you think is going to be the fastest bow at the archery trade show this year? And he said, well, I think Bowtech will have one about 315. And I said, yeah, where are you guys? He said, well, we're about 312. And I said, well, I think we're around 310. So we're all in the same boat. But at the time, 2 feet a second was a big deal. Mm-hmm. And he said, you think it's going to be anything faster? I said, yeah, something's going to be a lot faster here this year. And he said, who's that? I says, us. I said, PSE's got one. I said, I'll beat you at you bring your fastest bow to our booth tomorrow morning. We'll shoot it through the chronograph, and I'll bet you $1,000 that I beat you by 35 feet a second.
Jeez.
He said, that's not possible. I said, well, bring your bow. Well, 8 o'clock next morning, he was standing there, but he didn't have his bow. And we shot through the chronograph. It was like 347. So that cam, the X-Force cam, that was a big deal in archery at the time. There's nobody had anything like it, So I tell people when we first started making bows, our bow shot 190 foot per second, which is like 30, 40 feet a second faster than a recurve bow at the time. So, which is really good. So my competition bow or my hunting bow, we couldn't make them balance very well. So we had to have cams that were insensitive, so we didn't have a lot of let off. So like my target bow would peak 42 and hold 40. So that's what all the good guys shooting at the time were doing. And because we just couldn't make them let off a lot and still have them, they're very sensitive on balance. So that's why we did that. So now, it's 40 some years later, we're at 370. So it took all those years to double the speed. And people always ask me, well, how'd you do it? I said, it's just materials and energy storage and energy recovery. It's just good engineering. And we had the abilities to, with the engineering department, we had, David Cronengold and Alan Razor and people like that were really sharp engineers, and a bunch of other guys too. So we came up with that thing, and it was just a hit of the show, and it's been that way ever since. So I don't think anybody can beat us in speed.
I sometimes wonder back in the early 70s when compound bows were coming onto the stage, why they were adopted. If the let-off was so minimal, what was really the benefit that caused people to move from their recurve to something brand new?
Called speed, 30 to 40 feet more per second. Yeah, so that's what it was, all about speed.
Okay.
And
so in your opinion,
really much easier to shoot at the time. They're about the same technically for shooting skills.
Do you feel like there's another jump of any kind on the horizon, whether it's PSE or someone else? I mean, do you feel like you guys have kind of reached that plateau of speed, or do they still keep, those engineers still keep kind of finding, ways to inch out a little bit more from those bows?
No, we always do that. But the thing is, if you there's no such thing as 100% efficient. You got to store the energy, then you got to get it back to propel the arrow. So we're in the low 90s or so, and so you can't be 100. So getting more performance is you're not going to get it from being any more efficient. So the thing now is keeping the bows together, making them work, making them shoot super accurate, which we think they are now. And there'll be more materials around coming, and you'll get 2 or 3 or 4 feet more per second, but that's probably about it. We don't think that way, unless people can handle more weight. One time a year ago, a guy came in to me at a show and he said, "Yeah, you think you'll ever shoot 400 feet a second?" I said, "Well, what are the rules?" He said, "What do you mean? I mean, are they 5 grains per pound or what?" He said, "Well, no rules." And I said, "Well, we shot 400 feet a second, 2-3 years ago. That's not hard to do." And I said, but it takes a pretty good bow to do it. And so he said, when do you think you hit 500 feet a second? I said, that was last week. I said, he said, 500 feet per second. I said, yeah. I said, but it take you and me to pull the bow. So,
Yeah, impractical.
we have a couple guys in engineering that could pull the bow, and it's a 100-pound bow. So with a high modulus arrow, stiffer carbon arrow, lightweight carbon arrow, well, we could shoot 500 feet a second, and you could hit with it. We could shoot it at our indoor range and shoot it at 50 yards indoors there, and shoot it very, very well. So guys that can pull it anyway.
It seems like sometimes in the archery world, we focus so much on technology because we want it to compensate for our lack of time on the range and our lack of discipline. I know, Pete, you're a huge
you're hitting home here.
Pete, I know you're a huge proponent of coaching and really getting to know your equipment. Why do you think we tend to go so far towards looking at equipment as opposed to looking at ourselves and what we're doing right or wrong with a bow?
I think it's just human nature. People, just golfers, will spend $500 or $800 for a fancy new driver just because they think it's going to knock 2 strokes off their game. It's probably going to be worse because the driver's probably technically way better, but maybe takes way more skill to handle it. Same with the bow. So the thing about archery is people are the same, so they want more performance and easier shoot or more shootability of the bow, where it's more friendly. But when in fact what they need is coaching, and if you have the coaching, that will solve all your problems. I think. Won't say it'll solve all of them, but it'll sure help, because we have shooting school here at PSE. Alexander Kirilov, our Russian coach here, and we'll have 20 people a month here to come in for shooting school. 100% of the people in the last 2 years, everyone for the last 2 years, punches the trigger. And they're here because they can't hit anything, but they don't think punching the trigger is a problem, and it's all their problem, because that target panic situation leads to other situations where freezing and other things like that will make them quit archery in time if we don't get it solved. So coaching is everything in this sport, everything. And there are probably only, I think, maybe a couple dozen really good coaches in the country that can solve that problem. A lot of coaches can get you shooting correctly in that, and do pretty good. But getting somebody back to shooting correctly after they punch the trigger for a year or two, that's pretty difficult, and it takes some real skill, and it takes a lot of stick-to-itiveness from the shooter.
Is it worth it for an average bow hunter to invest in something? Like, can you buy just like a couple rounds with a coach? I've never engaged a coach, so I don't know what that process is.
You're better off to come down for. I tell people the first thing on coaching is about 3 or 4 days with them, and maybe with an hour or two a day, because you probably can't take much more. But the more, but the first 3 or 4 sessions, maybe you come for a week and you're here 5 days. Cost you a couple $300. I think it's $40-50 an hour. I'm not sure, but it's time really well spent, because he starts at the ground level with you. First 2 days you probably want to shoot the bow, so he's trying to set your form up so everything's correct, and then he starts having you shoot, and he works on all the little idiosyncrasies of things you do right and you do wrong. So he builds on all of that, and you'll come away with a whole different understanding of how to shoot. So. And it gives you that confidence that you can make a 40-yard shot on a deer. Otherwise, I tell people, if you're nervous and really don't know what you're doing, if you can't hit a pipe plate at the distance you're going to shoot a deer at, don't shoot the deer. Yeah. So, because you're probably just going to wound him and lose him. So, but the coaching is everything, and I just can't emphasize that enough about the coaching. And the archery industry is very lacking on good coaching. I mean, I think it's just absolutely terrible, because we've done a poor job of getting more people trained to be, level 1 through level 5 coaches. I think there's maybe only maybe 10 level 5 coaches in the country, if that many. And but I know our Russian coach, he's not graded in the levels because he came from Russia. He didn't go through the school here. So, but I know I think he's the top guy in the world, and he does a really good job, whether it's little kids or adults or older people or whoever it is. He knows how to handle people, and he knows how to get them to do things right. When people leave, they're very, very happy. But after that coaching for 4 or 5 days, what you need is about 100 5-minute lessons, every week or every month. And then I like to see somebody come back come back to PSE the next year and do another 4 or 5 days with them. But another thing I think about the coaching, I says, you know, with all the internet stuff like going on, and you can send him pictures of you shooting, and he can look at them and critique you right on the phone or on the computer. So that's a big thing now. I think that we can train people, you know, and you can be in, you know, Australia, and we can still train you from Arizona. So that stuff's going to happen, and it's going to get bigger and bigger now. Still, it's going now though.
That's incredible. It seems like just from the outset, it's a bit of a difficult proposition because the individual, the archer, has to first admit to themselves, I have bad habits.
That's usually the biggest problem is figuring out that's you and not being such a big man that you can't take somebody's help.
Yeah, take some humility and seek some help via a coach.
Yeah, I'll usually talk to everybody if they're here for a school, and I'll just Alexander introduces me, and they know me anyway, but. And I'll say, okay, everybody get up. I want you to walk back out the parking lot and leave everything you know about bows and arrows in the front seat of your car and come on back in. They all laugh about it. I said, but I'm absolutely dead serious about it because we really want you stupid in here because we want to take you from the ground up and do it again. So and do it right, because most people have not had. They'll start the game and not have had any coaching, and that really, really hurts our sport because we'll lose them after a while because they'll get frustrated and we'll lose them and they'll go fishing.
So you guys, obviously you've been in business since the 70s, and you've been on the ATA board. You've been around this industry for a long, long time. In your opinion, what's the biggest thing that we need to worry about for the future of our industry?
Well, I had that conversation with the Arizona Game and Fish a week ago. The head of the Game and Fish came down. I asked him if he'd come down and see what we're doing here and talk to him. And I think that we're not building near enough target shooters. And we said, well, the business is bow hunting, 92% bow hunting and 8% target. And that's the way it is with PSE, and I think that's the way it is in almost every company. But they're wondering, they put in a bunch of money in the fish and game departments around the country, put a bunch of money in some of the in-school programs that they're not getting target shooters to come out of it, let alone bow hunters. So I always say that if you start 10 people target shooting, 9.9 of them will go bow hunting. But if you start 10 people in archery bow hunting, almost none of them go target shooting. Mm-hmm. So the industry needs these people playing bows and arrows year round, not just for 4 months out of the year. And I think that's one of the things that really hurts the business, and it hurts the sport. It keeps it from growing. So we need to promote the tournament shooting, and people will be way better bow hunters as a result. And I think they'll have a lot more fun in archery too. So and plus, if you're really getting good at everything, you can travel the world shooting bows and arrows if you want to, and there's lots of critters to shoot other than the United States. So I just think that's a big deal to get everybody shooting correctly and then target shooting in the off season.
So a follow-up to that, in the past few years, we've seen license sales really grow for crossbows as well as sales in general for crossbows. And you see a lot more kids shooting them, and then a lot more, our sport is kind of aging out, obviously. Yep. And the older guys get, shoulder problems or whatever, they feel like hey, this gives me an opportunity to stay in the sport I love and shoot a bow and arrow, quote unquote, a bow and arrow. How do you feel about crossbows? Obviously, you guys sell them, you guys make them. I mean, what are your thoughts on the crossbow part of the industry right now?
Well, I invented the first compound crossbow in 1978. No one ever saw one before that. And it was kind of a fluke. We had a bank meeting and we had a little problem with losing money that fall. And so I had a bank meeting. And so one of my engineering guys and I started Sunday night at 5 o'clock, and Monday morning at 8 o'clock, we had a compound crossbow built, and it worked really well. But the idea of the whole thing was to get us out of a financial problem and to get the banks to stick with us, and which they did. But the thing was, it was really designed to get kids shooting and hunting at an early age, because you could shoot and kill a deer with a crossbow where they might not be able to pull a bow and shoot it accurately, but they could do it, off a bipod and a ground blind with the crossbow. And so and plus all the guys, like you said, have bad shoulders and can't pull a bow anymore. That's what the compound crossbow was for in its first inception from my standpoint. That's what I wanted it for. I didn't want it to replace all the guys shooting vertical bows during the season. So because I want some element of I don't know what word I'm looking for there, but I want it to stay the way it had been. So long bows, recurve bows, and compound bows. So, but then the problem is that fish and game departments weren't selling very many hunting licenses. The decline of hunting had gone downhill a lot, like 15 or 18 or 20 points. So what happened? They opened all the seasons up for compound crossbow or crossbows to hunt in the regular archery season. And then the other part of it is that no one in this country could build a good compound crossbow for less than about $700 or $800 or $100 or $1,000. So who stepped in? The Orient, and they could build them for a pretty good crossbow for $300. So that just took over the whole thing. People being somewhat lazy and wanted easier, or the gun hunters wanted to be able to shoot in the bow season because we had 3 or 4 months to hunt, and the gun hunters get weak if they're lucky. So you can't blame them, and they wanted to hunt more, so the crossbow fit their ticket really well, and I think that it made it easy for them to get in the sport. And not that I'm against that, it's just that I don't like what it's done to people, not enough people shooting the vertical bows. I just wish it didn't take that away, and it has taken that away some. So
I was going to say, it's introduced people, but they haven't converted quite the same.
Yeah.
And that's really the big issue, I think. And, I have friends that are picking up compound bows, or crossbows rather, and saying, you know what, hey, this deer's staying out there at 50 yards, and I'm not that comfortable with my compound there, so I'm going to take a crossbow with me in the stand tonight. And it's legal, and not all states, but the majority of them are opening up. I know Missouri here, Illinois, and so it's like, man, it definitely does open up a lot of opportunities for you. But like internally, I know even Dad, he's been shooting it more and more, especially since his accident last year, and he's been shooting his crossbow more. And whereas he's not feeling as comfortable with his compound as he was his crossbow, to him it's almost like it's a boost in morale.
Oh, sure.
The confidence that he has in it is unbelievable. And now every time I go to the farm, he's like, "You want to take the crossbow with you in the stand?" And I'm saying, "No, I'm all right." But I'm 37 and I love shooting my compound bow. And in my opinion, I don't really have the reason why I need to shoot a crossbow. And I get it. If a deer was out there and he's a giant, you'd want to have the ability to reach out and shoot him. But I'm also not that tore up about that end of it either, to where that doesn't matter to me. I want him to get close. If I'm archery hunting, I want a compound, with my compound bow. But I don't look down on anybody else for using a crossbow. Sure. But it is a weird thing. Like, you're hearing more and more and more about it.
that's true, and I think you just summed it up. Of what everybody thinks. In fact, 50 yards is a short range for a good compound crossbow. I mean, we could shoot 2-inch groups with 5 arrows and at 125 yards out of our Tech 15s, and we could do it every time, as long as the wind's not blowing too hard. So the accuracy potential, if you're in a tree stand and the deer standing out in the cornfield there, and he's at 100 yards, if you do the thing right, 100 yards is not a hard shot.
It's interesting to hear from Pete's perspective, because you do hear a lot of equivocation on the crossbow users will say it's pretty much the same thing as like they're equal. And when it comes to record keeping and are we going to count crossbow kills the same way as we count vertical bow kills, that conversation. And here you have the inventor of the compound crossbow saying it's not the same. They're kind of intended for a different purpose, and that was for younger people and folks that
need a little assistance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's the way it ended up, though. So I'm not real happy about it, but I'm glad to see people could still hunt because of the crossbow. I mean, as far as that concerned, it's a big deal. It's we got to keep people in the hunting and fishing game in this country. It's under a lot of pressure now, that, especially the firearms hunting. So, everybody knows what we went through under the last administration with the gun situation. So They scared everybody on buying guns and ammo, so people didn't buy bows for 5 years. They bought guns and ammo. They got closets full of ammunition. They'll never shoot in the rest of their lifetime, but they spent their money there instead of buying bows and arrows. So it pretty well hurt our industry.
Yeah. Pete, you mentioned folks in Asian countries building crossbows on the cheap. I know that's a pretty big discussion right now in the archery world as far as knockoffs coming from overseas. Has PSE been impacted by that, and if so, can you give us kind of an update on where we are with kind of cracking down on those?
I don't know if there's anything you can do to crack down on it. There's a lot of patents now on different features in the crossbow. I didn't patent the thing when I first did it. I didn't think it was really patentable. I made the first one, but a $300 crossbow from Taiwan is, if you take care of it and know how to use it, it's really a really good weapon. Mm-hmm. And so you can go to the $2,000 or $3,000 crossbow now. Is it a lot better? It'll be as good to 50 yards. But it'll be better out to 100 yards because some of the features they can put in them for the additional money you have to spend for them are worth it. It just depends if somebody wants to spend a couple $1,000s for a compound crossbow. But are they worth it? Well, it depends what kind of deals you're hunting under.
Well, and even beyond crossbows, I know knockoff broadheads are coming out of China and other accessories. Have you guys seen any of that coming through?
Oh yeah, of course. Everything's being knocked off. You can buy anybody's bow over there in China if you order enough of them. I don't care whose it is. Mm-hmm. And so it's going to be very difficult. I think could be difficult in the future because it's just if you can't compete, it's going to be a real problem for the makers in this country. So. But China has now they tell me about 1,000 archery clubs. Korea has a lot of archery clubs. The best shooters in the world. There's more good shooters coming out of Korea because they have better training programs for target archery. Hunting is non-existent there pretty much, but target archery is everything, and it's their national sport. So they've developed some of the best coaching in the world, and consequently have developed some of the best shooters. If you can beat the Koreans, you've really done something. It's very difficult.
Well, Pete, it's been great having you on the show and talking about the evolution of the industry and where we are today and where we've been.
And Pete's the revolution of the industry. That's what I like about it.
Yeah.
Before we go, I've always heard this, and I don't know if it's true, and I never asked you this. Is there any truth to the fact that it used to be called Pete Shepley Enterprises, PSE?
Well, as 4 or 5 engineers were sitting around in a cubicle there at Magnavox one day, and we were trying to come up with a name for the company. Well, it got to be Pete Shepley's Equipment, is what they were saying. But I wanted a name that so we could build guns or cannons or crossbows or regular bows. So it was precision shooting equipment. That's the name we came up with, and it stuck. And there's lots of different words for the acronym.
So that brings up a very good point. You guys just started PSE Rifle, is that right?
Right.
So take us through some of that.
Well, we're looking at some other different products to get into in this precision rifle series shooting, which is kind of a lot like field archery, but it's these guys are shooting 200 to 1,200 yards, and they shoot from all kinds of crazy positions on a course of 10 or 15 targets. And so we thought, well, we're good at machining and we're good at anodizing. Let's build a chassis stock for these. We're not building the whole gun, just a stock. And so we just recently got that done, and it's been under kind of making all the mods to what we initially thought we wanted, and listen to the guys that shoot that competition. And I'm told there's about 25 or 30,000 people shooting that precision rifle series competition, and there's quite a few bow hunters now shooting it. So I think it's going to be a popular sport, and we wanted to get in some other area of sporting goods, so we thought we'd try that.
So even, all these years later, you guys are still innovating and finding ways to kind of keep up with the technological curve. I'm sure that's one of the most expensive parts about what you guys do at PSE is the type of equipment that it takes to make those type of products. It's pretty costly, isn't it?
Well, the milling machine to run those, we run them on a Makino 99. That's a $1,200,000 machine. Oh, and by the time you tool it up and put all the tombstones and everything on it, you can easily have $1.5 million in it. So if that thing sets idling for 10 seconds, it's not making any money. So you have to run it all the time to make it pay for itself, because it's very, very expensive. But they're very high-tech machines. They repeat to really close tolerances, and we have 4 of those things, and then we have about 20 other smaller ones, and where we make the cams and all the other kind of accessory parts and things like that on for bows. But we can make, you know, from little parts to a gun stock series style thing, or a bow handle, you know. So it's just all part of it. We you know, we like to look at something that we're good at manufacturing, we're good at machining, and we're good at that, and we want to be good at carbon and stuff like that too, because carbon's never going away, and there's going to be lots of products in carbon. Look at the carbon gun stocks now, you know. Our carbon handle bow is just super bow, and if anybody that shot one, you probably can't take it away from them. They love it, and wonderful to carry, and it's just really, really hard to beat, and they shoot really, really well. So
your plant takes up a whole city block, doesn't it? As big as it is.
We have 145,000 square feet under one roof. So
it's impressive. It's cool.
I can't imagine just the number of machines and.
Yeah, going there and taking the tour, which we've been lucky to be able to do a couple times with these guys. It's just it's interesting to see that side of the business, the manufacturing side, because I don't know that many companies can say that they have that type of manufacturing, especially here stateside, and that's what kind of makes it special about PSE, I think.
Yeah, we've converted one of the warehouses in the building into a shooting range, and we're going to be able to shoot 60 yards indoors. We'll have about 90 targets, and we want to put on more and more tournaments, more and more shooting events. I don't care if it's air rifles or throwing spears or whatever it might be, but we really want to grow archeries, and that's the idea of it. So we want to put on lots of different kinds of tournaments here. So we cleared out some warehousing space to be able to do that, and we think that's going to help a lot. And I think the thing too to grow the sport is we're going to have a lot more talking between, you know, guys like you and you younger guys. We don't need your dad and your uncle to talk much because they're old now. Anyway, no, I'm just kidding. But anyway,
but not.
we need to have meetings here and look at what we're doing. We need to have meetings up there and look at what you're doing, so that we can figure out how to grow this sport, because the sport needs to be grown a lot, because the pro shops are having a tough time too, as long as everybody else. So with the downturn in the shooting sports industry. So we think that everybody working together, we can grow this a lot. But the pro shops, the industry needs people shooting bows and arrows year round, not just for the hunting season, because that won't sustain the businesses anymore. So that's a big problem. So.
Yeah, you mentioned the school programs. That's a big deal. My neighbor, they have probably a 10-year-old daughter, and she actually she started up last year, and I've actually tried to help her along a little bit. And I know we have another neighbor that shoots quite a bit.
Are you coaching her?
Not a coach to the group, just simple stuff. I'm not good. I don't think I'm qualified to coach anybody. But when it comes to the simpler stuff, you know, I try to help out, and I've given her some equipment and stuff like that, and at least try to encourage as much as possible. Let her shoot in the yard if she needs to or whatever. But it's interesting because it's a pretty big sport there. And I think it is in a lot of areas in the school system. It's pretty big. But the problem is they don't seem to convert, like you said, Pete, they don't seem to convert to the next portion of their life and continue to shoot. That's true. It's weird because we had a meeting with the MDC here, and they said something similar when it comes to youth seasons and the ability that, like, we just had the youth season this past weekend, firearm season in Missouri, and they said that the conversion of those youth hunters, you get a big participation when they can get that early season and somebody mentors them and takes them hunting. But once they age out of the program, they don't come back. At very low rates do they come back. And I think it's something similar is happening to those school programs when it comes to just target archery. So I don't know what we need to do to convert to the next step of their life, but we're obviously missing the mark somewhere.
Yep.
Well, one of the problems I think is that we do a lousy job on selling the sport. We don't do a good job selling the idea of archery, and it's fun. Lenny Basham wrote that book with winning in mind, and I think he tells about when he was younger, and I don't know if he was pretty chunky or what, but anyway, he knew he wasn't a superstar to play basketball, football, or any of those sports, but he read something for rifle shooting. It says, "Can you stand still and repeat the same motion every time?" He said, "Well, I can do that." So next thing you know, he's an Olympic champion and world champion rifle shooter. So we have a sport that fits any kid, that if they can stand in one spot, not move, and repeat the shot every time, we can make them world champion with the right coaching. So we have the right ingredients. We just don't have enough coaches or enough kids playing. There's 37,800 high schools in this country. If we could have 10 kids out of every high school, we wouldn't be having this conversation. We'd be busy coaching them. So that's what we need to do. We need some more marketing on the kids in school, and explain to them how they can go hunting all around the world. They can go tournament shooting all around the world, because the world is growing and the tournament shooting, and the U.S. is growing slowly, but the rest of the world's growing more quickly. So we need a good sales job. We need some marketing in there.
Yeah, and the mental discipline that comes from archery has overlap into all kinds of other areas of a young person's life.
Absolutely. Great for them. Yeah. Very good for them.
Well, Pete, we appreciate you jumping on with us today. We could go on and keep talking forever. There's so many little facets to what you guys do, and what you've kind of created, an industry that you've helped create, that I just love to talk about. And I love hearing your stories. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, you bet. Anytime. We should do some more of this, and work on some salesmanship on how we get kids into the target archery, and then we will get them in bow hunting. So
I'm in.
I know we can do that.
I'm in.
We need to have you come out here and visit.
Anytime.
Okay, thanks for having me.
Thanks, Pete.
All right. Well, thank you for everyone who listened. We appreciate that, as always. If you want to subscribe to the show, do so at all the places you would normally find podcasts: Google Play, iTunes, Stitcher, Podbean, all those great places. You can also catch us over on YouTube, right?
Absolutely. So if you're watching this podcast, you're already probably on our YouTube channel. Hit subscribe. We're shooting for 100,000 subscribers, and we're actually giving away a PSE bow when we do hit 100,000 subscribers. It's been a program that we've been promoting for several months here, and we're getting close. We should hit it here in a couple weeks. So you want to get in and subscribe before we hit that 100,000 mark. And we're constantly putting up new hunts, new tips, new tactics on our YouTube channel. And as always, you can follow us at Drury Outdoors on social media. And the last thing, DeerCast. We've been talking about it for months, and it's growing like wildfire, like crazy. And of course, you could capture anything we're doing at Drury Outdoors right there. DeerCast, see the kills as they happen this season. Something we've never done before, so we're really excited about that. And it's a free download this season. You can get it on the Google Play Store or the App Store over on your iPhone. So without further ado, if you're wanting to find out anything more about PSE Archery, you could go to psearchery.com, and of course follow them on all their social media channels as well.
Yeah. What a show. I mean, what a legend.
A lot of information there.
Yeah, amazing. Great. Well, thanks for listening, everyone. We appreciate it. We'll see you on next week's show.
Peace.
We're adding new videos every week, so make sure to click that subscribe button and check out all of our amazing content. This episode of DoD TV is brought to you by Lacrosse Footwear.